Hi, I'm Bill Lane. I'm the IT manager here at the library. I've been here for almost 11 years, started in January of 2013. I was 17. It was the summer before my senior year of high school. I was just kind of sitting at home during the summer, not doing much with my time, wasn't doing a lot of good, getting in a little bit of trouble. So there was just a day I decided to start getting my life straightened out, start doing better and to be better. I was living at home with my parents. They both worked. Aurora, Indiana, just across the state line there. What I did is, sitting there by myself, thinking about the things that were going on and things I was doing. In an instant, I just said, I'm just going to go ahead and join the military. I had a lot of family, a lot of cousins and uncles and aunts that had been in. They were in the Army and the Air Force. So I was like, I'm not going to do that because everybody's done that. I'm like, I heard the Marine Corps was pretty tough, pretty intense. And I was like, well, I want to be the first in the family to do that. That's how much thought I put into that decision. It's about how long it took. I got up and I actually drove straight down to the recruiter and walked right at the Marine Corps office was at the end of the hall. And I remember walking in and every recruiter, the Air Force and the Navy and, National Guard and stuff, they would all like, hey, come here, kid, as I walked by their doors. They all had glass fronts. And I'm like, no, thank you. I just went to the very end and I saw the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor and I turned into his door. I said, I want to be a Marine. And he smiled. He goes, well, come here, kid. And that's how that happened. Yeah, I went to boot camp. I actually had a choice. I could go to Parris Island, South Carolina, which is like the traditional boot camp, or I could have went to San Diego, California. And I'd never been away from home by myself. So I was like, I don't want to go to California. I want to do the real deal. What I thought was the real deal. It's all the same. So I said, I'm just going to go to Parris Island, South Carolina. And went through my senior year of high school. We would come down to Western Hills to the MEPS building and do some training, try to get us ready, for boot camp. A lot of calisthenics, a lot of running, things like that. It was the first time I'd been away on my own. First time ever flying on an airplane. We had to fly down to South Carolina. And then riding on the bus. When we got there, these young Marines picked us up. And we rode on a bus for 3-4 hours at night. And you think like, you can't see anything because it was dark and it was raining. And you think you're just like out in the middle of nowhere. And then as we pulled through the gate, I could see the Parris Island Recruit Depot sign. And I just had a really bad feeling. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. The bus stopped, the drill instructor comes on and, he's saying, when you get off my bus, get on these footprints and you stand at attention. And that was the beginning. It was intense for 13 weeks. It did not end. It was, training and stress. It was very hard. Everybody breaks, they break everybody down to build you back up. So, some people took longer than others to get to that point, but when you first get there, they keep you up for like 3 days straight, because they want you all to fall asleep together for the first time. You wake up together and then you get on that pattern. So it's pretty, when you do it, you're thinking, man, this is just crazy, but there is a method to the whole thing, psychological. Yeah. You would dream about it in your, so you never got away from boot camp. You were there 24/7 for 13 weeks. Yeah, the training was pretty crazy. Tons of running. They called them humps, where you have your uniform on and your backpack, and you start off the first time, you only got a few things in it. By the end, you have everything you own in it. And it was so heavy that, I had to like pick it up forward and set it on my head and put my arms through and then put it on. You couldn't just sling it on like a backpack. I mean, it was just, back in that day too, I was a kid, I was 130 pounds and this thing weighed probably 70 pounds. Yeah. And then you're never alone. You're always with drill instructors. You're never by yourself. And the training is always happening. Even when you're writing letters, or, it's like the downtime in the evening, you get like an hour. It's just, there's always something. It's always something. Out of boot camp, I actually went to Marine combat training down in Camp Geiger, North Carolina. It's next to Camp Lejeune. That was a month-long, combat training course. You're out in the field most of the time. You learn the things to do, how to patrol, and things like that to get ready. Everybody in the Marine Corps is a basic rifleman. So, no matter what job you have, being a rifleman is your core job, So after that, I went to Camp Johnson, North Carolina, which is right down the road, for school. I was a 3521 diesel mechanic, worked on heavy equipment, troop carriers, 5-ton dump trucks, logistic vehicle systems, really big trucks. Did that for about 9 months, and then shipped right over to Camp Foster, Okinawa, Japan. Yep. So I was there. It was supposed to be a year duty. I was in the 3rd Motor Transport Battalion. We supported the Marine 3rd Expeditionary Unit. And so we were there. I didn't really like it. It's pretty hot over there. It's like the hottest day you ever felt here is what it is at 5:30 a.m. So pretty bad. About 9 months in, Desert Storm, the Gulf War started. So I had been there 9 months. I had 3 months to go, and then they'd come and tell us, instead of sending you to Kuwait, we're just going to make you stay here another 6 months. So I was a year and a half gone. So basic training, I started in August of 1989, graduated November 10th, 1989 on Marine Corps birthday. So it was the end of November to the end of December was Marine combat training of 1989. And then into 1990 was schooling. And then probably the summer of 1990 is when I went to Okinawa. So being over there too, when I graduated boot camp, November 10th, I got married on November 13th. So during school, we had an apartment I wasn't supposed to. So we did that, but the whole time I was gone in Okinawa, my wife was back home. We'd call each other once a week on the telephone, 30 minutes. It was like $600 a month for phone bill for that. Like kids today, how connected everything is. It's just like, it would have been awesome. But back then it was like writing letters or just a single phone call. So I got through Okinawa. I returned back to the United States, went to Camp Lejeune, 2nd Combat Engineers, 2nd Marine Division, and I actually joined the unit that I would have went to over in Kuwait. They were just getting back from the Gulf War. So we had a lot of time getting all the equipment back in, getting it all repaired, getting it back into the system. And that's where I spent the duration of my time. 2nd Combat Engineers, it's a different unit. It's like you're a diesel mechanic, but you also go out during combat situations, clearing minefields, clearing bunkers, and things like that. You don't think about that being like a diesel mechanic, that you're going to be in that kind of situation. But I knew I had to get away from home for a while. The people I were hanging around with. It's kind of weird. I don't know how much I should say, but like some people that I knew that I wasn't necessarily good friends with actually went to prison. So, I got out, got away, got some time on my own. I'd still come home on leave and visit other friends, but yeah, I just knew I had to not be here. 4 years. Yeah, 4 years active. And then you had to do 4 years inactive. So you actually come down, I can't remember exactly where it was at, but down to one of the MEPS buildings here in Cincinnati. You had to verify where you lived, your phone number and everything like that, just in case something happened. They wanted to call you back in. They knew where to come get you. At the time, it's kind of weird thinking back, because I'm like, I should have, and if, I could have done it. But at the time, being married is it was good and bad. Being married was tough, especially when you're away. But when you're back home, I would not go out. I would just go home. So it kind of kept me safe there. But there were times like I would have to go to desert training. They would just give me like a week's notice. So we'd have to I'd have to go get my wife, get her packed up, get her home, and then come back. It was tough on a relationship for sure. Again, being back then versus today, it could have been a lot easier. You have FaceTime, you have everything here, today. So that's really why I didn't like that part of it. But the Marine Corps, doing the job, being with, your brothers and sisters and stuff, that's pretty awesome. I always think if I could have did it now, having been out long enough, I could have retired, 10 years ago. Yeah, the hindsight deal, but yeah, it was the best thing I ever did for me. Yeah, 21. Yeah, because I turned 18 right before I went to boot camp, and then I have like 2 sons, both are in the Army. So when it came time for them, when they decided they wanted to join, I was like, well, let's try the Army or the Air Force, just because there's a lot more opportunity, in the bigger branches. The jobs are different and things like that. So, serving in a time of war, you don't think about it when you're doing it, but when your kid goes, yeah, it's different for sure. My son, my middle boy, served 5 years. He was in the 82nd Airborne. He worked on drones, so he did a tour in Afghanistan. I talk about this all the time. He's been out for 2 years, 17, 2018, I think, right around there. So yeah, 2018 he enlisted, did 5 years, did a tour. He's out now. And then our youngest, he's just 20 now. He's been in for 2 years. He went to South Korea. So that was his overseas duty station for now. But, he's back. He works on Black Hawk helicopters. So, it's got to be somebody, I don't know. You try not to worry, but you do, But, he's got 4 more years to go. We'll see. But he should be back in the United States for the rest of his time, but, that always changes. So, yeah, the Army has airborne, jumping out of the airplanes into wherever they're going. So it's kind of weird, you think about airborne and then, working on drones, because they actually would launch them and, they retrieve them. How that all goes together, I'm not really sure, but yeah, he called us a couple times from Afghanistan. Yeah. So I was like, it's weird. I mean, there's nothing bad. I mean, just like the things he would say, I'm like, hey, don't tell your mom that. Tell me. Yeah. Like leadership traits, being honest, integrity, dependability, learning responsibility, what it is to be an adult, to do the right thing when nobody's looking, to have good judgment, to be dependable, those things like that. Yeah. Yeah, I can't stand to be late. It's kind of always been a weird thing, but yeah, I mean, if you have some good traits, some qualities, and you just, stick with that, you're usually pretty good to go no matter where you're at. That's pretty different. So I worked in a factory. I got out of the Marine Corps, started working at a factory since I incorporated down in Harrison, Ohio. Worked there until, 2012. I started there in 1994. About 2006, I just kind of was like done with the factory deal. So I went back to school for IT, got A+, Network+, Microsoft certified, system administrator, things like that. And I worked for CBTS, like on the side on race weekends at Kentucky Speedway. Got the experience. That job was a network engineer, but you really kind of did it all. It was like the PC tech, through networking. Got that. Got my first job in management there since I incorporated. Had a new owner, and he came around and asked, about some things that they could do to make things better. And I told him, and he came back, and 3 days later, I had my boss's job. So I had the IT stuff, the certifications. I got into management. I was there in management from 2006 until the end of 2012 when 2011, I went back to get my bachelor's degree from Indiana University East as a cohort in Lawrenceburg. And I actually met someone that worked here. He was doing the same thing. And when he got promoted, he was the head of IT. The computer services manager job was open. He's like, "Hey, we got a job open." He goes, "You want to apply?" I was like, "Sure, I'll apply." And came through, did the interview process, and got the job, and that's how I started here, from factory to IT, into management at a library. Yeah, 2013 January is when I started. Yep. Yeah, it's kind of weird too. Like this place is like the best job I ever had, the best place I've ever worked. The Marine Corps, 4 years in the Marine Corps felt like forever. It was just, I don't know. And then, the time I spent there since I incorporated just felt like forever. I've been here almost 11 years, and it does not seem like it's been long at all. It just flies by. My worst part of my day is driving to and from work, because I live in Indiana. I could not get my wife to move, so I drive an hour and 5 minutes each way. During the Okinawa time, it was a lot of long days. Boot camp just felt like forever because there was no clocks, no calendars. It's 24/7 for the whole time. You don't even realize the month passes to the next month until you see like a stamp on a letter or something. And then in Okinawa was like during the war and everything. So we worked a lot of long days. We'd start at 5:30 in the morning and go till 11 at night, just to get vehicles, have them prepared and ready to roll. And in case, we got sent, to the Gulf. It was just a lot of long days and, being away from home and away from your wife and things. So it was tough. So it just makes it pretty hard. Yeah, it was all in the Gulf. Okinawa at the time, that's just like a duty station that a lot of Marines get sent to. Yeah, it's like the first duty station for a lot of Marines. They send you to Okinawa for a year. Yeah, the Gulf thing, it had everybody on like alert, around, but it's not like being there. I wasn't afraid to be sent there. You definitely don't like want to, it's not something that you just want to go do, like to actually go fight in a war. You don't think it's going to happen when you're a kid anyways. And then when it does, you're like, But if you get called, you get called. You just go and do it. That's something too, like the Marine Corps. It's like, what do we call that? The discipline of it. It's just what it is. You get the orders. That's what you do. You're trained to do it. That's why you're there, and you just go. Yeah. So not that I wouldn't not go. I would go for sure, but given the choice, yeah, probably not. Yeah, you don't think it's going to happen. But when I was in Marine combat training, we had this sergeant, and he had a big group of us, and he's like, look around. He goes, I guarantee you in the 4 years or whatever, he goes, some of you are not going to be here. I don't know about that, because there was like nothing going on, and then, sure enough, when it happens, there wasn't nobody from the unit that I went to, the Camp Lejeune, the 2nd Combat Engineers. They all came back. There was no casualties or anything there, but definitely they saw some stuff. Yeah. There was a time that he called us and sirens were going off, and he's like, "Hey, I'm not exactly sure why he called, but he's like, hey, just checking in." I'm like, well, I can hear sirens. And he's like, yeah, there's a rocket attack, going on. He goes, most people are down in the bunker. He goes, I just got off of work, so I'm over, in the, they were like barracks, but they're just like these little buildings or whatever. And he's like, yeah, I got to get my stuff and go down there. It didn't seem to faze him. I actually had a nephew that was a sniper at the same time there, and he saw a lot of stuff, but he's back. A-okay. Yeah. So my son got a combat commendation for actually doing his job during one of the attacks. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, the things that were happening, just didn't faze him. You think too, like being, like a drone mechanic, you're back on base because you launched them and landed them at the airfield. Well, like, I don't know, a week or two in, one crashed out in the desert. So he had to go out and get it with some other, some foreign troops. And I'm like, that's kind of crazy. You wouldn't think that, but sure enough, they're out on a truck. They go across the bridge, and they were telling him how they took an IED off the bridge a couple of days before. And, he's out there. And they find the plane, and he's like, let's just load it up. And he says, sure enough, like out in the distance, you see people coming. And he's like, the soldiers he were with are like yelling for them to turn around. And they're just walking, coming. They just like shoot over their heads to turn them around. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, it's like no big deal. They took off, but I guess the language, whatever, the barrier, once they figured out, they just took off. But, that was at a time too, like when not much was supposed to be going on, but there was. So, yeah. Yeah, I was pretty amazed because you didn't really hear much about it on the news. Like there was any kind of rocket attack at Kandahar Air Base, but it happened a handful of times. My nephew that was out there, they triaged people every day. Afghan fighters that were wounded, they would come in, get them ready, get them on a chopper, get them sent out. So yeah, there's always, it's just weird what you see versus, what you see here versus what you actually know happens. Actually going through the Marine Corps, the times, I don't know. I just didn't do a lot of weird stuff during there because it's hard enough to get through boot camp. And, I just I'm not going to screw that up and get in trouble. I had to go through all this to get here. So some people, they go out, get in trouble, do whatever, just getting in trouble and getting busted down. You lose your rank and you lose your pay and things like that. I'm like, I did too much and went through too much to do that and to ruin it. And then this was for boot camp and Marine Corps. I was not going to screw it up where I had to come home and face friends and family. Yeah. That's really what got me through boot camp. I was not going to be embarrassed to come home. So I'm like, yep, I'm going through it no matter what. I mean, there were times I did want to quit for sure, but I just couldn't face, family and friends. Yeah, I don't have any good friends. I mean, there was just a couple of them that I would hang with, here and there. They got in pretty big trouble. But generally, the friends that I had were pretty good friends. Just, you do stupid kid stuff, but at some point you got to grow up. And yeah, so especially I don't know how the other boot camps and, how it works in the Army or the Air Force, but, you have to perform, you have to change. If you don't, you're not going to succeed. So yeah. And then, you go through the combat training, then you get out there and actually something happens. Now you could be responsible for somebody's life.